Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nisheeth from Knowledge Links, and Knowledge Links is basically a capacity building agency with its primary domain expertise in the water and sanitation sector. We have been working with the Government of India very closely since its reform initiatives launched in 1999, and uh, a very good presentation by the Secretary himself, which gives us a sense of where we are in terms of Swachh Bharat mission. I'll just underline some of the issues which are inherent in the presentation made. And a couple of opening points. One, that it is certainly the most exciting time to be working on sanitation in India for the reasons already shared by the Secretary. It's Prime Minister's agenda for the first time. Top policy priority. You have a Secretary who is driving the campaign. But and we have achieved tremendous amount of speed and scale. And you can understand it by this simple fact that when the Swachh Bharat mission was launched on 2nd October 2014, there were only 13 declared ODF districts in the country. So we had 13 districts in 30 years, and we have now 136 ODF districts in 3 years, which is average of 44 districts per year. 530 districts have yet to be achieved in remaining 24 months. So you can work out the. So this is the speed which has been achieved. I'm not going into the actual whether the data is correct or not. We can look into that also. But these are the declared ODF districts. So the speed and on some scale. So the issue which the Secretary in his presentation mentioned, I will focus on two. One is the focus on verification and sustainability. And then the Prime Minister's thing that it has to be a people's movement. So let's look at verification and sustainability. The sustainability question is often put that now the district or the community or the GP block is declared ODF. And if it is found to be not ODF after some time, it means it has slipped. And so it is not sustainable. But actually, this needs to be looked into a little closely, and somebody pointed it out. And one historical data could be of help. In 2011, the ministry website showed almost 70% coverage. And when then the census data came, it showed 32%. Now, this was hugely embarrassing for the ministry. They said 70% coverage, and then the only defense the ministry has that, look, this is not our data, this is the data which the states have provided. So now this gap of about 40%, census says this and the ministry data says this. Now, this is just by way of caution. We are not at the same place. I'll come to that. So then the ministry said that we would undertake a baseline survey. And this baseline survey was undertaken soon after the census data was out, 2012 to 13, 14. And then this baseline data showed that it's actually 40%. Which confirmed the census data because 4 years had already passed, so you would have obviously increased a bit. So it's around 40%. And there are huge problems with this baseline because this was done in great hurry. Many states, and we were working in West Bengal, we found that in a couple of days this baseline data was put together. So huge gaps, some villages missing or some places missing altogether and stuff like that. So but Government of India is now the latest data available is this baseline data. Now that caution that gives us room to think that we should not again run into a similar situation because 2009 it is almost certain that the country will be declared ODF because the speed at which we are going, it is not difficult to declare it. So it may be declared open defecation free, and I'm not being a pessimist because great things are happening, huge strides have been made. But there are areas we need to look into. So it will be declared ODF, but it will certainly not be ODF, as we know from the data on the ground, because there are varying understanding about what ODF means. One is that construction of toilets, you have constructed all the toilets, you can declare. Behavior change takes time, and for behavior change, you need people who can actually trigger communities. And triggering basically means that taking the community through a participatory process of analysis, which is self-analysis, where they find out that actually sanitation has a huge cost on their lives in terms of their social and economic life. They spend much more money on doctors, which is totally avoidable if you have safe sanitation and stuff like that. Now, to do it on this scale, where you have 640,000 villages, you need that kind of trained workforce, which is basically a capacity challenge. And all those challenges are also being addressed by Government of India, and large number of people are being trained and sort of to do these things. But that takes time, and it is proceeding at a certain pace, whereas there is a huge pressure and temptation to declare ODF. Now, so before sustainability, the issue which is not mentioned is the issue of credibility. And the credibility can be established through verification and stuff like that. Now, sustainability has other dimensions also, which some of you have already pointed out. If once you declare and once you are recognized as ODF, then there is no pressure on the district administration or to do any more activity, because you have achieved what you had to achieve. So sustainability can be ensured only in post ODF engagement with communities within the program, and the program provides room for this in the form of solid and liquid waste management. The other could be lateral institutional linkages, like Prime Minister Modi has another flagship program called skill development. He's talking about youth. In Israel, he was talking to Indian diaspora, and he said that he is very fond of saying this, we are the youngest democracy, 65% of the people under 35 years of age. But some of you pointed out that half of them are not, as the chair's initial address, that they are not fully developed, they are not cognitively developed because of tropical enteropathy. And so the quality of human resource or the youth that you're talking about is again quite inhibited in this sense. So these are the things that need to be looked into, and they're big challenges. Another thing, that the speed at which we are moving, and there's very little learning, though for the first time within the program, you have rapid action learning units. There is a provision for having rapid action learning units, where you learn from what is working and what is getting you the results that you want and what is not working, so that you can make mid-course corrections. And there, I think a lot of work needs to be done, and where institutes, and I guess many research institutes, including this Observer Research Foundation, and it's a very good name also, because we need to observe constantly with a view to understand what is going on, so that appropriate policy advice and also technical help can be provided, not only to the ministry, but also others who are engaged in launching this mission. There are large number of issues with deep linkages with other sectoral issues, and there the research agencies, learning units can sort of come forward and provide. We are working on the capacity building side, and we know the huge challenges, because you train people, then those trained people are not available because nobody has deployed them, nobody has engaged them. So there are a large number of other institutional factors which determine whether the trained workforce will be available to work or do the work that you are going to do. So to summarize, that before sustainability, credibility, and communication, because people understand different things by different, like Swachhata and ODF and stuff like that, capacities at various levels to actually undertake this work and implement it on such scale, and parallel concurrent learning, which can inform implementation. And your topic about policy and implementation gap, this is largely because the policy and the program has to travel through a very dense institutional medium, which has a certain way of functioning. They have their own limitations, because they are not designed to work with communities in a participatory manner. That is not their skill. So it has to be a multi-stakeholder engagement, for which efforts are being made, and intense civil society engagement. But when you are involving multiple stakeholders, clarity about roles and responsibilities and functional linkages, and these become very important. And if they have not been thought through and they have not been addressed, there are problems. So different agencies doing the same thing, and some of the things which need to be done, nobody is doing, stuff like that. So I'll close it here, and I think I've finished within time, sir, or so any questions later?
No, we'll do that. I think we'll have all the presentations and then questions. Now, Mr. Nicolas Osbert from UNICEF, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting UNICEF to the roundtable. Very interesting discussions. Few points. I will start with a bit of global perspective. So among all the things that India is known for abroad, the issue of sanitation is also known. It's part of, unfortunately, the issues. But this is changing. This is changing, and this Swachh Bharat mission is getting known abroad and is inspiring much beyond the borders of India. So that's really interesting. It's really identified as a flagship program, and to fulfill the rights to sanitation, to most vulnerable. And it's inspiring. Let's remind ourselves that sanitation does not bring votes. I've been working in many places, and everywhere you're dreaming to have a bit more leadership, political leadership. So that's a very strong asset of this program. And this is good news for children. And that's my second point. It's about what we know about the link between the impact of poor sanitation or improved sanitation. So in India, we have every year 117,000 children under 5 years old dying of diarrhea. This is 22% of the global burden. We have 39% of the children who are stunted, meaning that don't meet their potential growth development physically, but also, as reminded by the presenters, mentally. So can you imagine, this is almost 1 child on 2 that cannot learn as a normal children. It's huge. There's a big price. We can also mention that 14% of neonate death in India are due to sepsis. This is because of lack of infection prevention and control in healthcare facilities, and where neonates contract diseases in the hospital or in the clinic or in the health facility. So there are many of those, and this is not a fatality. This is preventable. There is strong body of evidence showing that. So I could participate to some of those research. It was published in the Lancet Global Health. Sanitation alone, just sanitation, nothing else, can decrease the risk of stunting by 14% and the risk of severe stunting by 26%, and also improves underweight and underheight of children. Decreasing diarrheal diseases require more than just sanitation. It requires hand washing and water quality. But just sanitation, this issue of environmental enteropathy, this is a scientific word to say there is feces everywhere. That's environmental enteropathy, and children absorb it, and then it damages their absorption capacity. So you can feed that child as much as you want afterwards. He's not able to absorb, and this is for a lifespan. So that's why it's such a program with regard to children, because we are the agency, the UN agency looking after children. This is a real chance. So what we do, we are working across 15 states, covering 80% of the rural population, and we are coaching in those 15 states at the same time 130 districts. So this is about capacity building, influencing, especially for planning, implementation of the budget. We believe that as UNICEF, we have some good added value on hygiene promotion and behavior change. And the best evidence we have to have a behavior change is about all this issue of community empowerment. This is not about us professionals having the knowledge and bringing it down to the village. It's a bit about the contrary, and supporting the village to recognize their knowledge, their problem, and their solutions. And that's the most. This is how we are likely to really have behavior change. And this is what we try to work in. Of course, it's not just about communities. It's also working in healthcare facilities, schools, and Anganwadi centers, because this is where the habits are formed, on sanitation, toilet usage, but also on hand washing. This is critical, and the best evidence we have on hand washing is the daily practice at a young age that create the habit. Unlike sanitation, the use of toilets, the fact that if you don't use the toilet at the end of the day, you take risk of ingesting feces. That's an important point of the triggering. It's more difficult to get to that point with hand washing. I shake your hand, my hand is dirty, I communicate disease. It's more difficult. So this is what we focus on, and the government is on campaign mode. So part of the role of UNICEF is really to work on coordination so that we avoid duplication. This is why we are taking the lead in coordinating the cooperating partners. The main one supporting the mission is World Bank, UNICEF, Tata Trust, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and several NGOs such as WaterAid. So we try to work on this coordination so that we are aligned, we have a joint advocacy, and we don't duplicate, but on the contrary, we synergize our efforts. I will finish with the issues and the challenges. Let's not be complacent. I mean, yes, it's a great program, but if you want to list all the problems and issues, you could write a book about it, and some colleagues are writing books about that. The first issue is slippage, but if you want to turn it in a positive way, our issue is stickage. How do we maintain that? I mean, okay, we reach at some point ODF. How do we avoid that, to go back to practice? So this is the fact that, and I think the government is on board with this, to go beyond ODF. We reach ODF, but then there should be ODF +1, and we should maintain the presence and the monitoring and the revitalization at least 1 year after the ODF status. So here the focus is usage of toilets and the issue of maintenance, while trying to encompass the issue of gender aspects. But again, if I mention gender, I would preferably encourage males to use the toilet. Everybody use the toilet. That's what brings the impact. And then I think naturally you can go to operation maintenance. When the norm of using a toilet, because currently the norm is going out, is created, then you can really build on that and work on more general balance and maintenance and sustainability. So this issue goes with the need to sustain the Swachh that the Secretary was mentioning. And this is, we try to provide support here on the processes. How do you monitor? How do you nurture them? How do you continue to, they are volunteers. But like for all of us, I mean, I'm here on this table. Yes, I'm passionate about my job, but also I get paid for it. So how do you make sure that the incentives based on verification of performances is sustained towards those grassroots motivators? That's very important, and beyond ODF achievement, so that the habit is created and then we can have more distance. So this goes to the next point, which is about monitoring. We heard the Secretary, I think it's very rigorous what's going on. So we have MIS data from the sector. UN guy, we use a lot of acronyms. Management Information System. And at the same time, this is measuring more coverage. And at the same time, the government of India is using the household surveys, and this better reflects the usage. So this is why we have a gap that is not narrowing down. And so this is taking place, and I think it's honest. But we need to strengthen it. This rigor is there, but we would need to strengthen it. For instance, we try to convey the needs, the culture of spot checks. Don't believe what is reported to you. Go by yourself. And when you go by yourself, all cadres here, the tendency is that we bring them to the best villages. No. Go by surprise, and try to go to the filthy places where you can see the reality. So this culture of spot checking is very important, as much as so much data are coming up from the ground. And we try to support that. And also the monitoring is also about identifying and documenting for replication the best practices. What worked? You raise a lot of concerns here. The best people to answer you is those that are on the ground. So how do we capture that and say, this issue of gender in this particular district, they manage it this way. So this, and the learning would be very useful for the practitioners. I'm converging now on two remaining challenges, the issue of equity. So here we have two types of equity issues. Equity in planning, you have big pockets of population left behind. Of course, scheduled tribes, scheduled castes. It's a campaign, it's very intensive. So we understand that the plate is full and the bandwidth cannot absorb everything, but we must take care about those people. And they're not the only one, people that live in protected forests. I mean, I was in Mussoorie with all the district collectors and they came with a big list of people that are left behind because of planning. Now, there are also people left behind in beneficiary communities. It's the small portion of population who do not use or do not have the toilets. It can be because of poverty, it can be because of political isolation or because of caste and tribes issues. So here we try to support district to identify them and to, right from the onset, plan for this last mile, plan for the hard to reach. It's a big scale problem. So yes, we need to go for the low hanging fruits, and there are many of them, and they are not that much low hanging. It's quite difficult. But then we also need to plan for the hard to reach. And so this is what we try to support. And the final point is on the challenges, the solid and liquid waste management, especially in urban area. You know that 70% of the fecal sludge in urban area are untreated, so it's good. You convince people to use a toilet, but then all this fecal material is back in the environment. So you don't solve the problem until you have this. And it's all the issue of the value chain and the fear of the proximity of feces. And this image of senior people, I was told that the name Ayer is from a very senior caste, going down the pit and touching with bare hands. This is also Akshay Kumar and others. This is a very good symbol. How do we build on that so that the issue of maintenance and solid and liquid waste is in one hand accepted by the communities, in the other hand, professionalized. I believe that with the scale we are facing in India, it's the issue of professionalization. How do we have good public-private partnership where entrepreneurs make money out of handling this sludge, fecal sludge, correctly and put it in the right place? Not going for very complicated technologies, very simple but efficient removal systems. I will pause it here for our discussions. Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. Samirendra Chatterjee from Sulabh International, please.
Thank you very much, sir, for having given Sulabh this opportunity of making a presentation here in this August forum. I am Samirendra Chatterjee, the Executive President of Sulabh International, with which many of you may be quite familiar. You see, Sulabh International believes in action sociology. We do not believe in theoretical speeches. And Sulabh has been at this as a mission since 1970, much before people even thought about sanitation. And we look at things a little differently. You see, people today talk that 60% of the people are still defecating in the open, and now, of course, it has reduced to about 43%. But we look at it the other way. When Sulabh started in 1970, in fact, there used to be 0 toilets in the rural areas, from which it has come up to 60% today in the last 45 years. So it is not something which is unachievable. All that it requires is a little bit of planning, little bit of foresight. But our founder, Dr. Bindeshwar Pathak, was the first to realize in 1970 that if you want to do away with scavenging, which was his primary mission, so that people don't have to handle the human waste by physically carrying it on their head and things, then you need a technology. And this twin pit pore flush toilet was the discovery or invention of Dr. Pathak way back in 1970. This twin pit toilet is most simple, low cost, culturally acceptable, and also very easy to construct. Basically, I think Dr. Ayer, during the course of his conversation, had already spoken about it, the twin pit toilet. It has the advantage that the pan is a little different from the urban pan that you use. It has a higher slope, with the result that the solid can be flushed away easily with about 1 to 1.5 liters of water. First of all, I would like to say that in our campus in Delhi, Mahavir Nagar near Dwarka, we have live models of all these toilets, A lot of people visit it. On an average, about 30 to 40 people visit it. Almost all the ambassadors of various countries have visited our campus. The latest, of course, being Mr. Akshay Kumar, who had spent a couple of hours in our campus to see because for making that movie of toilet. And he has taken it upon himself as a mission to fulfill the dream of our Prime Minister to make the country open defecation free. And he has sought our collaboration so that collectively we could achieve something to that effect. Now, over the last 47 years, this twin pit technology, which was the discovery of Dr. Pathak, he did not patent it consciously because his idea was not to make money as a business enterprise, but to see that people can effectively utilize this technology in order to build the toilets and have hygiene and health way back in the years in 70s and 80s when people didn't even talk about it. We have built about more than 1.5 million household toilets, more than 20,000 school toilets, 10,000 in the last 2015 as the part of the campaign of the Honorable Prime Minister for having school toilets, and about 8,500 public toilets on the pay and use basis, which are still in operation. And Sulabh, you see, believes that both hardware and software should go together. So we do the IEC activities, and after convincing people, we also start with the construction. Because if one is done without the other, it only disappoints the people and you lose faith in them. So today, our toilets, which were built even 45 years ago, are still functioning. We have pan-India presence. We have offices in all the 26 states except the 4 in the Northeast. And we have people working there. We do that work ourselves. And even today, if a 30-year-old toilet is also reported to be malfunctioning, our people will go and repair it without any problem. So that is the sort of trust that we have built over the last 45 years. And the toilets that have been built by Sulabh, people say that they are not working. Some of them don't use it. They use it for storing things and for cattle sheds and all. But in our case, we have found that all the toilets that have been built by us are in perfect operation. The only problem that happens is sometimes the drain gets choked, and then if you repair it, you remove the obstacle at the right time, it can again start functioning. And this twin pit toilet, the beauty is you use, I think as the secretary had mentioned in his opening remarks, that you use one at a time, and it takes about 1.5 years, according to the health scientists, for the human waste to be completely decomposed and become pathogen free and become biofertilizer. So that biofertilizer then can be used in the fields. So we have done it, and it becomes a very profitable thing. From a problem, it becomes a solution. And removing it is not a problem. We have in our campus, we have live models of these. We take all the celebrities and others who come, dignitaries who come, we take them around, show them the actual form of the human waste after 2 years. They are made to touch it, feel it, and everything. There's absolutely no pathogen. You just use it in the fields, and people are taking to it in a very... As I said, we have built more than 1.5 million household toilets. We had, for the first time, made Har Mithila open defecation free much before people used to talk about it in 2012. But then, declaration of the ODF, which I think was clarified here, is not a one-time affair. Because no sooner than we had done it, within 6 months, demand started pouring in that again another 10 houses needed toilets. Why? Because the families break up, the brothers break into separate houses, and then the toilet which was built in one part of the house, now the other family also requires another toilet. So it's an ongoing affair. So, but then we have to recognize that, and if we do it, I think there's no problem, because people once are used to having toilets. Yes, initially there is a lot of apprehension. In fact, I remember in one case, our founder is very fond of saying, Dr. Pathak, that he visited a village in Haryana where, the elderly person abused him. He said, "You are spoiling our children and bringing about chaos." So he said, "What happened?" He said, "Earlier, people used to eat at home and defecate outside. Today, people are eating outside and defecating at home. This is the change that you have brought in." So he had to explain to them that that is not the purpose of his activities. But in any case, to put it short, so this solution is possible. It's the most least cost. We have various models of it. Use local material, no problem. And if you don't have the money, you can even use the charcoal drums of PWD in order to have those 2 pits. The basic idea is using the power of the earth itself to decompose the human waste. This is for the individual household toilets. And again, for the public toilets, again, Sulabh, through its constant efforts at innovation, have now developed a biodigester which also decomposes the human waste in a public toilet and converts it into methane. And that methane can be used for various purposes like cooking, lighting, and even for heating during winter. We have again the live model in our campus where about 1,000 people use the public toilet on the outside, and the human waste is collected inside in the human digester and converted into methane. In our Sulabh campus itself, about 40 to 50 lunches are prepared every day using the methane which is generated in the biodigester. In the Sai Baba temple in Nashik, we have constructed one of the biggest public toilets with about 2,000 toilet seats, about 500 bath, and with lockers and everything, so that the pilgrims who come there can put their things in the locker, have a bath, use the toilet, have the darshan, and then can go back. They don't have to stay at night. And 3 biodigesters are functioning there. About 40 to 50,000 people use it every day, and more on certain occasions. So these are functioning, and Sulabh also built the unique model of this pay and use system, as you know. We charge about 2 rupees and 5 rupees for use of these toilets, which now has been improvised to include baths also, including in the marketplaces and bus stands. We also have places for cleaning or washing of clothes, because the drivers and all who come, they also need to wash their clothes. So we have provided facilities for all that. That generate the revenue on which Sulabh runs. Sulabh is one social service organization which never accepts any financial assistance from government or from anybody else. Its business model is such that it is self-sustaining on the basis of the pay and use toilets. And this biodigester system can be very effective even for multi-storied complexes and in the tier 2, tier 3 cities where you don't have the sewerage system. Because sewerage system, as you know, is only there about 160 cities in the country. And even in a place like Delhi, it's only about 39% of the sewage which is treated. The rest of it is sent into the rivers raw in its own format. Now, our solution is again this twin pit toilet and the biodigester for public toilets. If this is done, then I think we can solve these problems. Of course, there are about 50 diseases which are caused by this defecation. And the first thing that we tell people in the village, that even if you go out open defecation, where this is our research and our finding, the human waste, if you stamp on it, it starts from the soul. And then the various diseases, they go up. So if you are wearing even the simple thing as a slipper while going out to open defecate, it reduces your chances of contaminating any of these 50 diseases to the extent about 70 to 80%. And then, of course, we tell them, because there's no point in telling the villagers about the benefit that will accrue to the country. We tell them the benefit that will accrue to them: less disease, more health, more education, because you will not lose time from the schools, more productivity for themselves because they will not fall sick, saving in terms of preventive health and this thing. And therefore, they take to it very easily. And then we also use the human tendency. We try to have it in this school teacher's house first. Now, the moment you have a toilet in the school teacher's house, the local baniya, who is more wealthy than him, gets the feeling that unke ghar mein ho sakta hai, to hamare ghar mein kyun nahi hoga? So then they start building it. And then the other affluent people, they start slowly building. And so we use this human tendency also of being one up on the other to ensure that these toilets are built in the villages. We have been doing it, and I think the target that has been set for 2nd October 2019, another 40% of the toilet to be built. We have prepared a draft plan also and given it to the government. But we feel that, technology is the first thing which should be frozen. There are various technologies, as I said, that now EcoSan and biodigester of DRDO, etc. are there. But unfortunately, we have found that in many places, they are building the single pit instead of the twin pit. Because their feeling is that, 2 साल हो जाएगा, उसके बाद किसने देखा है. But that is not a permanent solution. In the interest of the country, it has to be a twin pit, because if you build one single pit, then after 1.5, 2 years, it will get filled up. And then after that, what? You have to abandon it. And rightly so. A large number of these 5 crore toilets that have been built have been abandoned only because of these reasons. The technology was not correctly applied. But if it is applied, if it is insisted on, and we are very happy that now the government has also insisted that a toilet is not complete unless you have water. So in the school toilet that have been built, water has been mandatorily provided. And this is, I think, a very big necessity, because without that, again, the toilets will become unusable after some time. So once this is done, I think we can easily achieve this if we are determined and if we make a concerted effort. So Sulabh's achievements speak for themselves. Dr. Pathak has been awarded and rewarded with various awards, including the Padma Bhushan, and of course a large number of international awards, which have come to him in the course of his work, nothing else. So we believe that the target that has been set by us for making the country open defecation free can be done. It has to be persistent. We have to be at it. We have to make proper planning, etc. But once that is done, I think this target can be achieved very soon. And with people now realizing, at least as everybody said, that now that realization has come, and especially with the children, we find that children will be the best ambassadors for this Swachh Bharat mission. Incidentally, in our campus in Sulabh International Organization, we have a public school which is run by us itself, which is on a basis of 60-40 ratio. 60% are the poor slum children and scavengers, 40% general students. 60% are free, provided with education, uniform, books, etc. The 40% nominal fee is charged. And this is perhaps the only school in the social service sector which is run in English medium, because we believe that without an English medium, the children will not be able to compete. Fortunately, these children, we have the school up to class 10 now. And here we also teach about sanitary napkins, which we feel are an essential part. In about 2 rupees 50 paisa, a sanitary napkin is built by the children themselves locally in the campus itself. And these are used. We have the incinerators in the girls' toilet, a dispenser and an incinerator. So dispenser first, you put in some money, and then that comes out, you use it, and then put it in the incinerator, it burns itself and converts it into ashes. And we are trying to propagate it. We have formed this sanitation club of school children. About 260 schools in Delhi are covered by this. Our children from Sulabh International, they go to these schools, talk to these children of the other public schools and tell them about the various benefits of sanitation. And our school, I think, is also the only school where the teachers and students, they between them clean the toilets on a roster basis, that Monday this class, Tuesday this class, like that. So, and initially, of course, there was a lot of resistance. Then our founder said that if you don't want to put your children, you're welcome. There's no coercion. It's voluntary. So after that, now people have adjusted. The schools, it is being done. And as I said, that through the sanitation clubs, this is also being propagated to the other schools. We hope that in course of time, the system, that there's a different class of people to clean and all will go. And like Japan and other countries, the people themselves will clean their toilets. And as long as they do that, I think the purpose will have been served. So thank you very much, sir, for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. That was very, very impressive. I mean, most of us vaguely know about what Sulabh has been doing, but not quite the details that you mentioned today. It's very illuminating. Mr. Gatade?
In Hindu, we talked that 250 manual scavengers exist in the capital, Delhi. And last year there was a report in Times of India about Chennai's modern airport having people doing manual scavenging there. And these are not exceptions. The socio-economic census data released by the government says that the manual scavenging officially banned, but it continues. And the question arises why manual scavenging persists despite advances in technology and material progress. Is it because as the Planning Commission said earlier, that's because of a lack of water service latrines, or there are some deeper reasons behind it. If one looks at the handbook of ILO, which 2 years back it came out, it said that it throws light on the persistence of this practice. And it talks about the endurance of cultural notions of caste pollution and purity and assignment of persons to despised work, the Dalits, caste inequalities, and all these details, and the culture of impunity which exists in our country. If the question of manual scavenging is associated with, one can say that question remains whether the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan would be able to make a dent in the situation, because unofficial figures say that there are 13 lakh manual scavengers in our country. Official figures are around 2 lakh. Safai Karmachari Andolan's figures, 13 lakh manual scavengers. Question remains whether the SBA can make a dent in the situation. And there have been many committees, many commissions, and India is a unique country in the world. We have had two laws, two central laws. One law was 1990-30 and 2013. Another law we enacted. But as far as conviction is concerned, there is no conviction. So there are a lot of problems with the law and implementation. But the SBA, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, whether can it make a dent in the situation? And we can look at the open defecation, because manual scavenging is related to open defecation. The report prepared by UNICEF and WHO, India is the largest number of that figure has been mentioned by many people. Around 600 million people are there. And that India's proportion in the world is increasing. So 2006, it was 55%, 2013, 61%. And if one looks at the sanitation journey of India, it's decreasing at a very slow rate. And with 15-year period, Bangladesh reduced from 34% to 1%. And so a lot of problems are there. Why the problem is there? And there is another thing. Whenever one talks of making India OD free, the question of resources is raised. So when Mr. Iyer was talking on the other presentation also, we have to put in resources, we have to make ODF free. Question is not of resources. In countries poorer than India in GDP, they are OD free. So that needs to be looked into. And I was reminded of Sangeeta Vyas' talk, TEDx talks. She was talking about the pit latrines, and she mentioned an interesting fact that the pit latrines which Mr. Chatterjee was mentioning about, the pit latrines which are built in India, they are higher than the UN standards. Why the pits are deeper in India? Because the problem of cleaning the pits arises, and that is a big problem. And who cleans the pits? Bejwada Wilson, leader of Safai Karmachari Andolan, says that you are just roping in the Dalits, scheduled caste, again into these. If we continue with this, and the ODF, whenever talks about it, we talk about the toilets. We have to build toilets, and the Swachh Bharat Mission talks about toilets. But the NSO report, which came last year, it said that many toilets in the countryside are useless because there are a lot of problems. Water and other problems are there, and quality of construction is also not good. The question of making ODF free, the India ODF, doesn't include includes the question of building toilets, but it excludes the question of the sanitation chain. Focus on toilets has another unfortunate, unsavory effect. There is deliberate, also one can say inadvertent neglect of the subsequent stages of waste management, and that is a big problem in India, and that's why untreated sewage is being dumped into water bodies and open grounds. Geetika, Anand and Vishnu direct our attention to a report. A report was prepared by CPCB, which estimates that how much this implies that around the remaining 62% do not have any access to sewage treatment facilities in India. That is the present condition. the inadvertent or conscious neglect of the whole sanitation scenario and the hurried manner in which Clean India is being envisaged also gets reflected in the way workers engaged in the work at various levels are dealt with. It was only last year that Mr. Tarun Vijay, who is an MP of the Bharatiya Janata Party, he reported to the House that every year we have 22,000 deaths annually while cleaning sewers in the country. He was just referring to a report of National Commission for Safai Karmacharis. And so the question arises, there is a lot of talk of behavioral change. My question is that, yes, people's behavior need to be changed, but the government also has to look into its own behavior. Because there are a lot of problems. It's time that government sets its priorities, because if one looks at the funds for toilets, there are funds for toilets, but not for rehabilitation of scavengers. 3 days back rather, the Indian Express has reported that amount set aside for self-employment scheme for the liberation and rehabilitation of scavengers has shrunk to 100 times from 557 crores within 4 years. Within 4 years, it has reduced to 10 times. And another problem is that, one sec, let me just have a look at this, the other point is, my point is that time that powers that we decide, the question I had asked Mr. Parmeshwaran Iyer also, which route one has to adopt to make India OD free? Persuasion or coercion? Because it was not the death of Mr. Zafar, Comrade Zafar in Pratapgarh was an exceptional incident. He was killed in Pratapgarh because he was protesting against the manner in which the municipality people were taking photographs of women. He was protesting. But death is not the main thing. There are states in India, they have made laws and acts that if you don't have a toilet, then your ration will be denied to them. You cannot contest an election. So these things are also being tried. That is a big problem. And the whole question of sanitation is, my understanding is that it has been decontextualized from its social roots. India and 99% people who are engaged in cleaning belong to what we call as Dalits, or the constitution calls as scheduled caste. In a caste-ridden society like India, where one witnesses deep-rooted association between the caste and cleanliness, which has condemned a section of its own population to the work of cleaning, it appears that there is a conscious refusal to look at this linkage on part of the policymakers. And this refusal has resulted in providing technical solution to a social problem. And this sociological blindness towards caste is leading to unforeseen circumstances. We are witness to return of caste or its further strengthening with a vengeance. The people are talking about school sanitation campaign. Who cleans the latrines in the schools, in the village schools? The same Dalits are condemned to clean them. The upper caste people, it's good to say that upper caste people should also clean it. Teachers, it's a good example that which Mr. Chatterjee was mentioning, that teachers and students both join in cleaning the latrines there in the toilets in the school. But in India, the scheduled caste students are forced to clean the toilets which are being built. So that arrangement is not there. What is the big problem? That arrangement is also not there. And secondly, emptying of the pit latrines are introduced in a big way. And once again, the scheduled caste people, the Dalits, are roped in to clean this thing. And secondly, my last point is that one needs to abandon the regressive thinking. The powers that be, the custodians of this country, which they have. People talk about this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, but one of the key leaders of the present dispensation was found to be comparing the degrading work of cleanliness, which in the Indian context is done mostly by particular Dalit class, with spiritual experience. So that needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gatade. Very valid and relevant points. But, I mean, the social ills are all there. I mean, it would be hypocritical to deny it. But why does it have to be a direct attack on the social ills as something contrary to technological development? In fact, technology can be one of the vehicles, not the sole vehicle, I agree, but one of the vehicles for attacking the social ills. And the work which you say Dalits are compelled to do, which is true, unfortunately. But if more and more of that work is done automatically through the system, then to that extent the problem gets solved. I'm not saying that that's the only solution. Also, sociological solutions have to be found. And maybe slowly, but they are happening, entry into temples and things of that kind. So that's a separate subject. Let's not go into details of that. But what I mean is that one is not opposed to the other. Yeah, okay.
Well, the technical solutions are there, but why this? Since last 70 years, manual scavenging continues. That, and despite n number of commissions, n number of laws, why can't we have suction pumps to clean the toilets? In Delhi, I have that newspaper also, Hindu with me. People are still cleaning doing manual scavenging in Delhi. 2 days back, that report came. Why can't one? If India can invest in cryogenic engines, if we can have first-class metro, why can't we use that thing? Why 22,000 people, which was mentioned by Mr. Tarun Vijay, in the floor of the house, 22,000 people, sewer workers are dying every year. 7 years back, Thiriyavan Anand, my friend, had done a story in Tehalka. So, and who are these sewer workers? The sewer workers, mostly Dalits. Why they are dying?
Agreed, but then again,
I'm finishing. So, only technical solution, if one neglects the social cause of that, social roots of that, I think there is a lot of it limits to the success of the campaign.
All that is agreed. But what I meant to say is that you were sort of posing it as an alternative, that instead of a technical or technological solution, you attack the solution socially. The point was, you yourself said that if there were suction pumps, then the people, mostly Dalits, they would not have to enter the sewage pipes. Well, that's a technological solution to a social problem, isn't it?
But why people are not doing that? That caste is very much.
No, but that's the point. You see, here. No.
I think, can I just
we are not having an argument here. I mean, it's a point,
exactly.
and it's a very important point you've raised, and it will feature in whatever paper we write at the end of as a result of this. But short point I was making was, let's not say that technology is against. That was my short point. Exactly. So, to the extent to which you see a suction pump can be used to free manual scavenger from manual scavenging, that's a success. Okay, now, no, I think
This is talking about septic tanks, I think, not the sewerage as it is, because sewerage is through water flow. In septic tanks, yes, nowadays the suction pumps are used, but unfortunately, there are many places where you cannot take the suction pump or the vehicles. There probably the manual thing has to be done.
Okay, now what we'll do is, it's 1 o'clock, so we'll have about half an hour of interaction, question and answers, etc. But in the interest of time, if I may request people to be brief in their interventions, and where there are questions, just one question only, please. You can name the panelist you want should answer the question. If not, any of the panelists want to answer them, can do so. And if nobody opts for it, then I'll suggest who should answer it. Yes, please.
Sir, I have just a query with Mr. Nicolas. Since you are associated with the UNICEF and you are also talking about the community empowerment and the professional expertise. In Indian condition, what are the things technologically you are going to suggest for the designing of the toilet, some other things that can help in rural India? Because community participation, that is fine, but in spite of all these things, social problem, maintenance problem, there are so many things. But globally, what is the techniques generally you use that can provide the affordable and the less maintenance, more social acceptable technique for the toilet maintenance and another things like that? Thank you.
Yeah. I think let's have about 3 or 4 questions, and then they can be answered. Yes, at the back, lady over there. I think could you give her a mic, please?
Hello, I'm Anuradha. My question is to Mr. Chatterjee. Sir, a very intriguing thing is how do you ensure water sustainability in Sulabh toilets? Because probably that can serve as a lesson for other places also. Do you buy water? Do you enter into local ULB understanding for supply of water to Sulabh toilets? And how do you, even in rural areas, when you provide toilets, how do you ensure water is given to them?
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, gentlemen, right at the back.
Hi, I'm Vignesh. The question is with respect to how do we sort of treat the solid waste that's already dumped? For example, in there are big dump yards, etc. And we've also studied about techniques used in the US or in the West about using landfills to generate methane. And what is the viability of such a technique or any others on those lines, like using bioremediation in India? And how do we sort of implement it in an action mode, or what is the timeline for that?
Yes, please.
So my question is really with relation to the community-led aspect that we are all talking about, and the implications, of course, extend into what Mr. Gatade also said. Now we say that this is community-led, however, the implementation of it is through the panchayat. Now one may argue that they are representatives of the community, but the panchayats remain beholden to the block development officer, who thereafter goes under the CEO, who's under the DM, who's under the state government, and thereafter it just becomes a top-down effort which is led by the state government, which is why you see variations across. Uh, Now the flip side of this, unfortunately, is that as representatives of the community, the panchayats are also a very concentrated embodiment of all the prejudices, and which is why simple technical solutions don't really impact the caste issue or the tribal issue. Most of the sarpanches that we end up speaking to have these, casual tossed up statements about how the tribals are incorrigible and how the Dalits cannot be helped, so on and so forth. Uh, this dichotomy and this conundrum of actually getting the community, such as be it tribal, be it Dalit, to actually take charge and put aside these so-called representatives who are essentially government functionaries. How do you ensure that it is actually community-led rather than community enforced?
Introduce myself. So I am an academic, so I'm afraid I go deeper than action research. What I'm finding is that, there's a rather colonial approach in the language that we use here about them and us, and the fact that they are unclean and they are unaware and they need to be taught. And I personally, not just, I think there's been a lot of research done, especially in South Africa, that it's rather strange that you use a blame and shame approach for communities who have been excluded from these very basic services for a significantly long period of time, and that then you promise them an approach which then comes with all sorts of added advantages, as Mr. Chatterjee was saying, that not only do you get toilets, but you get energy and whatnot, etc. I think the fundamental question that I want to ask in relation to sustainability, which I think everybody in the room who's been presenting is interested and committed to, is the fact that without secondary and tertiary investments by the public sector in sanitation, is it possible to sustainably resolve and address the sanitation issue? Because I think there have been studies done elsewhere that even though you might enable this move from open defecation into using toilets, I think the long-term sustainability of providing sanitation does require serious public investment in sanitation, whether in the urban or in the rural context. And I think especially in relation to the urban context, I wonder how this approach would work in relation to urban slums. And I'm reminded, I live near Nizamuddin at the moment, where a slum settlement was actually, just as I was walking by yesterday, demolished and burnt down, I think probably in relation to the beautification of the area under, I think, the Aga Khan Foundation investments in that.
Madam,
So-
aren't we going off
I'm
the
sorry,
topic
I
a
just
little
want to
bit?
say very briefly that
Look,
how do you...
in a country, there are hundreds of problems.
Yeah. No, I understand.
So it's not saying that the
sort of
problems
probably
don't
going
exist.
into it,
But then
maybe
let us
more
keep the
simply,
focus
I
on
want
this.
to ask, how would you address, this issue of sustainability by making just interjunctions at providing incentives to households rather than actually working on the problem of secondary and tertiary links to sanitation services, which I think is what resolves the problem once and for all.
I think let's make that the last one, please.
My question is to Mr.
Would you put on the mic, please?
Question is addressed to Mr. Nisheeth, and it's regarding, like, we have identified Swachhagrays, but there's no structured program to, make them aware and take initiatives as far as training of their own peer group or their community is concerned. So you talked about rapid action learning units and you talked about the skill center, but do you have any structured program in which we can get them enrolled for a better, more effective approach? That's it.
First question was, so yes, there is. So first, this twin pit model is, in my experience, it's quite good in the sense in terms of the compromise between cost, sustainability, and comfort. It's a good model as long as you can make the fear of the proximity of mineralized feces. If you can beat that, so those kind of images. And a lot more than that, but that's, yeah. So what can we bring at UNICEF there? There are three problems, I would say. First, it's the hard soils. Two is the flooded areas. And three, it's this convergence chamber, I'll be brief, of the twin pit model. You know, the two pipes going in that concrete chamber. So for the flooded areas, we have models, and that's the chance to have a coverage in 80 countries. You have pre-casted low-cost pits, or not as big as a septic tank, that you can easily produce in India and work with in flooded areas. And for hard soil, the other solution is sur-elevated latrines. So we have also models where the pit is above the ground, and so that because you cannot dig. And as far as I know, it is authorized in India to propose your own model. So any district collector can make his design, send it to the ministry for validation, and then use it. And then for the chamber issue, we are working with Lixil, private enterprise. They have a very interesting design where, because, okay, sorry, I'm going to go into very technical, a bit technical, but the feces are supposed to go like this. They go down the tube, they fall, and then they need to put the signal, turn right, and then go to the pit. And what happens, if you don't flush a lot, it doesn't happen. So all the feces are stuck in the chamber, and then people say, my pit is full. No, your pit is empty. It's your chamber is full. So we are working on a solution now with the ministry and the private sector, where we have a PVC bend so that we don't have this problem and it goes directly. Sorry, I was a bit technical. Thank you.
I think most of the questions that have been asked, very legitimate questions. But the basic point is that this particular program is in a limited context, in the sense that it cannot by itself solve all the problems, whether they're relating to the caste system or the inadequacy of the panchayat system and all that. I mean, those systems are what they are. Caste system, I mean, everybody for the last, at least since the Constitution was written, and even from before, officially, caste system has been abolished. But then it's a societal thing. These things don't happen immediately. We just have to keep at it. Panchayats, yes, some panchayats are very effective, others are not. Some are corrupt, others are not. So, but we have what systems we have. That's why it's the district level officers, the district collectors have been made in charge of these programs. And it is for them to decide, depending on the kind of situation that obtain in their districts, what is the best way of moving a program forward, how much the panchayat should do it, how much assistance is to be given by the government agencies, and so on. The problems will arise. Sustainability is definitely a problem because there is a tendency in any target-based program to achieve the targets and then forget about it. It's like, roads are built and not repaired, and telephone lines are set up, and some work, some don't. But that's a constant exercise. One has to be at it. But as far as this particular program of Swachh Bharat, yes, but basically, as it was clarified in the beginning by Mr. Iyer, that they're taking up to start with just the open defecation-free part of it, along with, of course, disposal of solid and liquid waste management. There are other aspects to the Swachh Bharat program, some of which are being addressed separately. Some probably will be secondary to this one. But the focus now is to get rid of this problem of defecating out in the open, along with all the ill effects of this problem that are there in the country. And sustainability, yes. Monitoring, yes. I mean, there will be, as I said myself in the introductory remarks, a lot of over-reporting will be there that has to be caught by spot inspection or by monitoring, etc. So, but I would say this has been a very useful discussion and very enlightening one for most of us. The success has been quite remarkable, considering that this is something which we've been talking about for 50 or 60 years, and the kind of figures that Mr. Iyer mentioned, how much had happened in the last 50 years and what has happened in the last 3 years. I think needs to be applauded. But of course, we have to keep in mind all the difficulties that will come and try our best to solve them and make sure that the program is sustainable. The issue you raised, it is unfortunately a fact that the Dalits get the worst of it. But then it's only by solving the problem of open defecation that some assistance can be given to the Dalit. I mean, laws are there. Laws against carrying night soil have been there, I think, ever since I can remember. But are they being implemented? So, what I mean to say is not something we can discuss it in a different context. But exactly, that's a. But to the extent to which our suggestions, we will at the end of it put it in a policy paper, all the points that have come out in this discussion, and hope that they'll be taken note of by those whose business it is to solve these problems and to make use of these suggestions. Well, thank you all very much. It's been a very lively and a very interesting discussion. Yes, please.
I'm from an urban area. Swachh Bharat Mission in urban areas are almost the same, but the problem in urban area, in the rural areas. But I want to know the goals of this mission to be achieved by 2019. Because I think it's very difficult. And because the people are in the village, in the small areas, are most of the illiterate. They need some education, they need some orientation about this. Then the toilets can be used. So then ODF the problem can be solved in this way. So what do you think about this? How to change the mindset of the people?
Well, that's what we've been discussing during this.
The ODF, yeah.
No.
Yeah.
The need for changing the mindset also. I mean,
Because the people are not using the toilets in rural area or in an urban area also. There most of the problems are there. Some infrastructure shortages are there. Like there is no water, there is no proper electricity, no door. So how they in that conditions how the people use this ODA and these public toilets or in a community toilet?
well, it can only be by persuasion
the answer of this
persuasion and societal pressure. What else can we do? I mean, what would you suggest?
I suggest that because in the village or in a small area, people are uneducated, illiterate. So we should try to make them more orientation. We organize some orientation, so some awareness program for the rural areas people, so that they can use the more and more they can use the toilets, community toilets, and this is
Very good suggestion. So before we conclude, and Mr. Rumi Aijaz, senior fellow at the ORF, proposes a vote of thanks. I would like to thank him and express my great appreciation to all the hard work that he's put in organizing this event. And Satish Teja, between the two of them, they've set it up. I think extremely well done. And, yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir, for driving this program. On behalf of the Observer Research Foundation, I thank everyone for participating in the roundtable discussion, and especially I acknowledge the contribution made by the panel speakers. The experiences shared contain very good lessons for us, for everyone, and I feel that based on these lessons, important directions can be derived from these lessons. These lessons not only tell us about the prevailing conditions in the country, in the different parts of the country, but also help us in understanding the interventions that are being made or should be made in the times to come to address the challenge of maintaining sanitation in the country. I personally feel and realize that there are several things that are known that are being done, but there are many more things that are not being done. So it has to be a comprehensive and complete approach if this issue is to be addressed. Now the task for us is to compile all the deliberations that took place during this roundtable discussion, the important points that have emerged from the presentations made by the panel speakers and the participants, and to put it in and to document these ideas for the use of policymakers. That's the job for us to do, and it's a fairly challenging task. Once again, I thank you for coming to ORF and participating in this program.